maybe around afternoon, but this is the morning update. So this morning, we've been having a lot of eruptions in Puna area. So we had more fissures opened up on Kahukai and Leilani. The fissure on Kahukai and Leilani that got reactivated is massive. So a lot of destruction going towards Lani Puna on the south end of Lani Puna subdivision. So Hinalo Street on the south end. So there's lava that is actually flowing that way. Nohea Street, cracks been opening up, and also lava been spewing out of those cracks and started to flow down into Leilani. Fissure 22 still active, pushing lava towards the ocean. And also there's another fissure that is southeast off the line, about half mile away from the line of all the fissures. So this fissure is actually towards the ocean. So it's half mile away from fissure 22. So if you look at the maps that it has been posted up, that's what's happening. Another thing that's been in discussion, that PGV, there's lava that is on property, on site. A lot of the main guys that are running PGV will be flying in at 12 o'clock today to assess what's happening. Another thing too, there's a hot spot on Chaina Craters Road, right near Puhimao Crater or Manu'ulu area. So as far as if that happens, there will be the Chaina Craters Road will be jeopardized as far as that will be an exit route for lower Puna people. So there's a hot spot, I repeat, there's a hot spot on Chaina Craters Road right now, right near Puhimao Crater, and so that's right on the road. If that fissure open up on Chaina Craters Road, a lot of the exit routes for the lower Puna people will be kind of slowed down. So the only place would be Highway 130. Highway 130 is pretty much on stress right now because of a lot of the East Rift Zone is actually under the road that is continuing on towards Leilani. So that place is very highly active still. Let's see if anything that is going on. I'll see my partner in crime, Mileka. What you found on Mileka?
Nothing. I haven't found out anything. This is what's so frustrating about this process. All we know at this point is that, and I don't know if you already touched on this, that Puna Geothermal Venture officials continue to tell us that the lava flow has not reached the 40 acres that they consider to be their plant site. Meaning that while they admit that they lease about 815 acres across the lower Puna area, they are right now telling us that lava is not on their plant site. It's not on their property. And so they're also telling us that they are making every effort, that they've been working around the clock to try to address the capping, the plugging of that 11th well. Again, I missed much of Yukaika's report. Look at me, I'm so sweaty and gross from walking in from outside. My goodness. Sorry guys, kalamai. If Yukaika didn't already touch on it already, what PGV has on site are 11 wells. Of the 11 wells that they have successfully been able to cap 10 of them. There is an 11th well that they tell us has been extremely problematic. They've tried injecting fresh water, they've tried injecting salt water, and this is the process that they call quenching, to basically kill the well by removing the heat and also depressurizing what the situation is underground. And that's because of the concern, of course, that if they don't do that, that could potentially release hydrogen sulfide into the air. They don't know for sure exactly what will happen if lava inundates the property, but what they're doing right now is they're waiting for this mud-like substance to arrive at the plant, and they're going to attempt to plug the well with that since water hasn't worked. So that's what we're being told officially by PGV, and of course if we hear anything else we'll let you guys know. But we're also hearing reports that we are working to confirm that they are putting together a mass evacuation plan. I don't know, again, if Ikaika talked about that. That's not coming from PGV, that's not coming from Hawaii County Civil Defense, but that is something that we are hearing from folks on the ground here who are operating roadblocks. And so There, again, are no mandatory evacuations, but there is discussion about what might need to happen given the fact that nobody knows what could transpire if lava interacts with an active well because, and again, correct us if we're wrong, nobody has ever built a geothermal plant on the slopes of an active volcano. So they don't know with any certainty exactly what will happen or could happen given the fact that these wells have been drilled about 7,000 feet underground. So, back to Ikaika.
Another thing too that that has transpired in the last 12 hours. So another fissure opened up on, like I said, below fissure 22 towards the ocean. So I talked to Philip, which is our expertise person in geology, and what he said was this area is highly active. So where the fault line or the fissure line that is kind of going perpendicular to the ocean or parallel to the ocean, that fissure line, if you draw a line, all these fissures are connected, but there's still a huge chance of half mile due east to the ocean and half mile due towards the Pu'u side. That's all still active and anything could be breaking out. So we've been seeing some unstable land areas in the area, and so we've been watching that. Another thing too, just to give everybody the heads up. What was that again? Just delete them. Decline. So other than that, that's the update. I'll be inside the areas and giving footage right up close, but we're here trying to figure out stuff here at Pu'u because we are noticing we might be having an evacuation plan here. So that's that. So hello everybody, and also the word of the day, stay classy.
This is a civil defense message for Tuesday, May 20th at 6 in the morning. Hawaiian Volcano Observatory continues to monitor active flows. Fissure 6 reactivated last night and has been erupting since around midnight, slowly flowing closer to Puna geothermal venture property. Due to this activity, the following policies are in effect. At this time, the situation is being closely monitored. There is no immediate threat to any of the wells at PGV. Due to the Lay's hazard at the lava ocean entry, please stay out of the plume. Due to hazardous conditions, the following roads are closed and all are asked to stay out of the area. Highway 137 is closed between Kamaili Road and Poho'iki Road. Kamaili Road is closed to all through traffic. As a reminder, there is an eruption update community meeting at 5:30 at the Poho'ai cafeteria. The residents of Lower Puna are going through a very difficult time. We ask for your help by avoiding the affected areas if possible. Thank you for your understanding. We are on watch 24 hours a day for your safety. This is your Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency.
Hawaii County Civil Defense says that an ash plume was sent 8,000 feet above sea level. Now we're told that the wind may carry ash toward Wood Valley, Pahala, Na'alehu, and Waiohinu. Experts say that at least 5 fissures are still active, and fissure 22 has been producing most of the lava that is feeding the only ocean flow right now. Hundreds of people remain displaced by volcanic activity. The governor says that efforts are being made to make sure that the community is safe.
You know, the challenge with the eruption is that it is unpredictable. You know, it'll get quiet for a little bit and then boom, we have an explosive eruption or the fountaining restarts again. And so clearly we are working with state, federal, county assets to look at how we can sustain the effort.
Now, there is still a lot of concern about the Puna geothermal venture. Lava has already made its way into the property, and the governor says that the lava front is only about 100 yards away from the plant itself.
Hoa, Mileka, what is the latest on the wells at the facility?
Aloha, good morning, Steve, Grace. Well, Governor David Ige also said this morning during his interview with you guys that he does not believe that the state at this time has been able to address all the potential hazards posed by Puna Geothermal Venture Plant, and that's because of the difficulty that they're having plugging an 11th well. Now, there are 11 wells on site. 10 of them, they tell us, they have already successfully quenched. However, they've been having difficulties with that 11th well. Now, according to personnel from Puna Geothermal Venture, they've been working around the clock trying to do this quenching procedure, which essentially is killing the wells by pumping cold water into them prior to plugging them up. And again, 10 of 11 are complete, but the remaining well has proven problematic, and they won't know until later today if their efforts were successful. According to PGV, one well has resisted both fresh and salt water injections in their efforts to kill the heat and pressure. That's why they are waiting on a substance similar to mud to get into the plant area today that they'll then attempt to use to plug that well to prevent lava from interacting with the gases that are trapped inside. And again, they won't know until later this morning if that substance even arrives. Now, this comes on the heels of Hawaii Emergency Management Agency officials saying that if lava interacts with PGV's wells, it could trigger the deadly release of hydrogen sulfide. And that's exactly why earlier this morning, again, Governor David Ige said that he did not believe that the state has totally mitigated all of the risks posed by Puna Geothermal Ventures operation, even though those 60,000 gallons of pentane have been moved off site, as we know, taken to Shipment Industrial in Kea'au. There is still the question and the concern about what could happen if lava were to inundate the area where this 11th well, again, still has not been depressurized. Sources tell us it's unclear exactly what could happen, other than, of course, what they describe as that uncontrolled release of hydrogen sulfide. More coming up in the next half hour. For now, back to you guys.
All right, thanks, Mileka.
All right, 7:05, there was a blowout at a well being drilled at PGV back in 1991. Nearby residents were evacuated as steam was released for about 31 hours. It reportedly sounded like a jet taking off and reached 90 decibels. The hydrogen sulfide gas released smelled like rotten eggs. 2 minor injuries were reported then.
We have some new video that shows another view of the ocean entry near Pu'u. USGS experts took this video yesterday afternoon, and you can see the laze plume that's being created when the lava hits the cooler seawater. Laze is an irritating mixture of hydrochloric acid gas, steam, and tiny volcanic glass particles. That plume stretches for 15 miles downwind.
We're also learning more about the man who was injured by a flying piece of lava over the weekend. He has been identified as 57-year-old Daryl Clinton. He was apparently hired to take care of the home of a man who moved back to the mainland to escape the eruption. Contrary to some reports, we were told Clinton did not lose his leg, but he remains hospitalized.
As the Kilauea eruption continues to make national headlines, organizers of the Ironman World Championship are urging the triathletes not to cancel their travel plans. The World Championship is in October, and a more immediate concern is the Ironman 70.3, which is half the distance, and a prep race for the main event. That is scheduled for June 2nd, which is less than 2 weeks away.
Race organizers are trying to spread the word that the areas impacted by the eruption are limited to Lower Puna. On the Ironman website, organizers say the race happens on the Kohala coast, which is about 100 miles from the eruption zone. They also say the air quality on the Kohala coast is fine and that the airports continue to operate as normal. Queens ER doctor Wayne Warrington is planning to race in the half Ironman that's coming up next month. He is hoping the trade winds hold up and keep all that bad air offshore. 7:07 right now. Consumer Reports say it cannot recommend the Tesla Model 3.
Yeah, Howard's here with your 1-minute economy.
Good morning. The magazine says a Ford pickup brakes better than a Tesla.
So the unrest at Kilauea has been going on for over 2 weeks, and we still have activity at the summit and the lower East Drift zone. At the summit, there have been several explosions, sending ash plumes, not up to 10,000 feet, just a little bit below that. And also then at the lower East Rift Zone, we have had a couple of fissures reactivate, 6 reactivated overnight, and then fissures 22, 6, and 19 are still sending flows that are going down to the south, and then there's some that are starting to flow a little bit to the north. That's the update for today.
Objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the call over to Paul Lauston. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, welcome. This is Paul Lauston with the U.S. Geological Survey. Thank you all for joining in today. Today we're going to have 4 speakers. Janet Babb with the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, Jessica Farrakane with the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park Service, Dr. Alvin Bronstein with the Hawaii State Department of Health, and John Bravender with NOAA, National Weather Service. Our first speaker today is Janet Babb with the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, spelled Janet, Janet, B-A-B-B.
All right, thank you, Paul. So the name of the game today is change. So I had the report ready at 8 o'clock this morning, and things have changed since then. So keep in mind that by the time we get finished with this call, things could have changed even more. But fissures, just a quick update on the lower East Rift Zone. Fissures 8, 21, and 6 showed some incandescence, but not erupting. Fissure 17 was just spattering, but the flow from that fissure was not advancing. Fissure 20 had been active, but I just got a text message that it's no longer active, but that Fissure 19 is active. But the real story is with Fissure 22. It is very active. It's the main fountain on the system. It's the fissure that's producing the lava flows that are headed to the ocean. The fountains on Fissure 22 are reaching heights of about 50 meters. And as I said, it's sending 2 channelized flows to the ocean. They're open channels, and lava is entering the ocean in 2 places. The ocean entry, of course, the hazards are the lays that I spoke about yesterday, I would like to clarify one thing from yesterday when we talked about how far the effects of lays might reach. Please keep in mind that the farther you are from the ocean entry, the more diffuse the effects of lays will be. So it does disperse as it's blown downwind. Another hazard that's being created now because lava flows are going into vegetated areas are methane explosions. And these occur because of decaying vegetation, creating methane gas that can accumulate in pockets and crevices, and then the heat of the lava can ignite it, causing explosions. These are quite a big hazard in vegetated areas, and the explosions can occur well away from the actual lava flow itself. At the summit, just before 1 a.m. Last night, there was an explosion that sent an ash cloud to an altitude of about 7,000 feet above sea level. And I do want to caution media that these plume heights are given as above sea level. That's not the distance just above the crater, but it's above sea level. So please keep that in mind when you're reporting. So then between 2 and 4 a.m. there was frequent emissions of ash. It ultimately produced an ash cloud that rose to about 10,000 feet above sea level. And then this morning, as we're speaking, there seem to be very frequent but much smaller emissions of ash. These could be rock falls or small steam explosions. But it's quite active, and these explosions are expected to continue as long as the rocks are falling and there's enough heat in the conduit to generate the steam. So I know that in past days you've asked a lot about the chemistry. We don't have any further chemical analyses. We have been collecting samples. A lot of samples were collected yesterday. The analyses are underway, but nothing new to share. The same thing as we said yesterday, that the material being erupted from Fissure 20 does look like it's receiving magma that's come down from Pu'u is mixing in with the older magma, and we're seeing a change in the composition and a change in the character of the eruption. And so I will stop there.
Okay, thank you very much, Janet. Our next speaker is Jessica Farrakane. Common spelling for Jessica, and then her last name is Ferracane, and she is with the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park Service.
Hi, aloha. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. Can someone give me a little feedback on that?
You sound good.
Thank you so much. Okay. Not much new to report. Change is the new norm for us as well. But there is not much new to report other than, day 12, I think it is, of the majority of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park remaining closed, 2/3 of it. And this week we will start our additional days at the Kahuku unit, which is located about 1 hour south of the main entrance of the park in the Ka'u district. The Kahuku unit part of the park will be open Wednesdays through Sundays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We also continue to maintain our presence downtown Hilo at the Moku Papapa Discovery Center. That's Tuesdays through Saturdays from 9 to 4 p.m. So come see us down there. And then the news that we announced at Saturday's or last week's press conference was that the Chain of Craters Kalapana Road will be used as an evacuation route. I don't have too many new details on that. I'm waiting to work with Department of Transportation on a joint news release, but keep your eyes open for that. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Our next speaker is Dr. Alvin Bronstein with the Hawaii State Department of Health.
Hi, thank you very much, Paul. This is Dr. Al Bronstein. I'm the EMS branch chief for Hawaii State Department of Health, and I think change is the operative term here. We now have some issues, or not issues, but there's a new, as the lava enters the ocean, produces something called lays. If one were to be near that, delays because of the various gases in it can be irritating and corrosive to the eyes, the nose, the respiratory tract, and the skin. So we are recommending that the best medical management for exposure is distance from the exposure, and that people should not be near these events to prevent any adverse health effects. That's really all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last speaker is John Bravender with NOAA's National Weather Service.
Great, thank you, Paul. From a weather standpoint, we're looking at a pretty somewhat consistent pattern over the next several days. Moderate gusty trade winds continuing, fluctuating in speed, but maintaining their general strength out of the northeast, spreading any hazardous emissions towards the southwest, whether that be gases and fumes or from the summit, the volcanic ash spreading to the southwestward from the summit. Rainfall not as heavy as we saw over the weekend, more typical trade wind type showers that we're used to seeing, with the most rainfall at night and during the morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John, and thank you to all the speakers. We will now take some questions. Reporters, if you can please state your name and your affiliation and only ask one question to allow time for everyone to ask questions. We will circle back up with any follow-up questions. Thank you. And Amanda, if you can please open up the line for questions and answers.
Thank you. We will now begin our question and answer session. If you would like to ask a question, please press star 1. Please unmute your phone and record your name slowly and clearly when prompted. Your name is required to introduce your question. Again, that is star 1. One moment for our first question. Our first question comes from Michael Phillips. Your line is open, and please state your affiliation followed by your question.
Hi, this is Michael Phillips with Weatherboy Weather. My question is for Jessica. The park's been closed for a while. How significant is this closure in the scheme of the park's history? Has it ever been closed for this type of a period? What's the longest it has been closed in the past? And what is the economic impact to the park from such a long closure?
That was like 3 questions, but I can answer all of them. Hi, Michael. Good morning. The last time the park was closed for this significant amount of time was in October of 2015, and that was for the government shutdown. We were closed for 16 days from October 1st, 2015, and we reopened on October 17th. So that was a total of 16 days. The economic impact is quite significant. Hawaii Volcano National Park is the #1 visited attraction, not only on the island, but also in the state. And I believe the low end of the economic impact is that we generate the park itself and the people who do business in the park and the restaurants and hotels, et cetera. It's a $166 million impact on the surrounding communities, and that would be the island itself. So you can do the math, and that's, it's very significant. We realize this, and we don't make the decision to close the park easily. We work with our very great scientific team at the USGS to make those management decisions. And it is what it is, I guess. It's an unfortunate situation right now.
The $166 million is over what period of time?
That was the 2017 National Park Service economic impact numbers, and I can email you a news release that went out on that a few weeks ago after this call.
Great, thank you.
Does that conclude your question, Michael?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from John Burnett. Your line is open. Please state your affiliation followed by your question.
John Burnett, Hawaii Tribune Herald. My question is also for Jessica. You mentioned the Chain of Craters Road, and that was something that Wendy Stovall mentioned yesterday as well, saying that at this point the contact has been made with the State Department of Transportation and other government agencies, whatever they may be. And is there any timeline for getting meetings and plans together at this point?
All of that's in the works right now, John. I was told that once the work begins, it should be a fairly quick process. The lava from 2016 to 2017 that covered the newly created road is only well, it's still quite wide, but it's 0.7 miles wide, and that it should take about 2 to 4 weeks, provided there's no surprises. There are some hot areas down there, and that's what we, as well as other agencies, are working together right now to determine is a timeline.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Andrew Hay. Your line is open. Please state your affiliation, followed by your question.
Hi, this is Andrew from Reuters. This is a question for Dr. Bronstein. On the risks of blaze, geologist Janet Babb earlier said that the blaze diffuses as it drifts from the point at which lava meets seawater. I wondered how close one had to be for the blaze to be fatal. I believe 2 people died in 2000 when a similar event happened. What warnings would you say to people on how far you have to get away to prevent this mix of hydrochloric acid and I believe glass particles being potentially fatal?
Okay, thank you for that question. That's a very difficult question, actually. The distance from the lays that would be required actually depends on what the concentration is of the various chemicals in the lays, and I would defer to the USGS to give more information if we know the exact composition and concentration and the size and the air movement. So I really cannot give you an exact number. I would simply say that the greater the distance, the safer the person would be. Actually, and of course, being right there, very near to where the lava was entering the sea would not be advised or a good situation. The other issue, as part of your question, we don't really know what the health status was of the 2 individuals who succumbed, and so there's many different factors. And in general, though, I simply have to say one should not be near the output, and as has been previously stated, the concentrations do fall as the distance increases.
This is Janet Babb. If I might add a little more, the deaths in 2000 were a bit more complex than simply a matter of lays. So yes, agreeing that the closer you are to the source of the lays, the more intense the effects. But there were other factors in play in 2000.
So those deaths were not, in fact, caused by lays.
It wasn't as simple as saying that lays caused the death.
So it would be incorrect to say that lays caused those deaths. There were other factors.
Yes, we actually have. If you look on the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory website, we actually have written several volcano watch articles about hazards associated with ocean entry, and that situation was discussed. I'm sorry, I'm not recollecting all the details right at this moment, but if you want to email me, I can point you towards that volcano watch article.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Ron Lynn. Your line is open, and please state your affiliation followed by your question.
Yes, I'm with the Los Angeles Times. Thanks for the call. I was reading that same article, and it was those visitors were apparently scalded by acid-laced steam. But on the lays question, can you talk about is the lays going over any populated areas, and if there's any injuries so far, and And how is this lathe different from other, I mean, the volcano has been putting lava into the ocean, I would imagine, for, many decades. There are more lathes now versus in the last 3 decades, and in the past, has there been widespread injury from lathes?
This is Janet Babb. I'll start answering that and then let others chime in. So Kilauea Volcano has been erupting for over 35 years now, and I think something about half of that time we've had ocean injuries. There have been various ocean injuries throughout this decades-long eruption, and so whenever lava goes into the ocean, these lathe plumes are created, and so this is a situation where a different area now is being impacted by the lathe. And how intense the lathe is depends on the volume of lava that's going into the ocean, and then the areas that are affected depends on the wind direction, and how people are affected is their proximity to the ocean injury. So that's what I can add to that discussion.
Has the lathe, prompted, major problems like in an entire community, or is it basically tourists getting too close to where they should be in the first place?
I have not heard. Civil Defense might have some information. I personally have not heard of communities or visitors being impacted. But if you are downwind and you're in the immediate vicinity of the ocean entry, then you will be affected by the lathe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Miss Yan. Your line is open. Please state your affiliation, followed by your question.
Hi, this is Sophia Yan with the Associated Press. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the various hazards of the lathe. Is this something that's a risk only if it's airborne, or is it also a health risk if it's on the ground after they fall to the ground? And how far is the range for where lathe is traveling today? How much of the island is being affected?
Dr. Bronson, would you like to talk about the health effects, and then I can chime in?
Sure. So the lathe, the primary risk would be inhalation, with a secondary risk in the skin and the eyes. For contact with, for instance, if it is a hydrochloric acid, which can be corrosive, can be very irritating. So those are the primary health the health effects from the chemicals per se. Then you have the particulates in the lathe that can cause a lung irritation. The acids in the lathe are fairly water soluble, so one would experience health effects relatively quickly. And this, of course, would be a good time to leave that particular area. We do not have, I am not aware of anyone who has sustained any injury from the lathe at the current time, and we certainly would like to keep it that way.
Yeah, so it's only a risk if it's airborne. It's not a risk once it falls to the ground, these little glass shards.
I think once it falls to the ground, the risk would be extremely minimal once it mixes with the earth.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Damian Tucker. Your line is open, and please state your affiliation, followed by your question.
Hi, good morning. I'm with Big Island Now. Question: at what point will the decision be made to open the chain of crater roads, if it is deemed necessary?
Can you repeat the question, please?
At what point in time would Chain of Craters Road actually be opened, and would it be opened if the park is still closed?
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that yet. As mentioned, we are still working with our partners on determining the logistics of the reopening as an evacuation route. And at this point, we're also still doing assessments on the earthquake damage from the 6.9 magnitude earthquake that occurred at the beginning of this current cycle. So hopefully I'll have some more information for you, if not today, later this week.
And is this emergency road cinder road, or is it a paved road, or is it 1 or 2 lanes?
Again, I don't have the details on all of that quite yet, but I would assume that it is going to be very similar to the previous road and not a paved road. Again, it'll be an emergency evacuation route, from what I know, and not a regular thoroughfare.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Sherry Bracken. Your line is open. Please state your affiliation, followed by your question.
Sherry Bracken, Hawaii Public Radio and Mahalo Broadcasting. I understand that lava has now entered the Puna geothermal plant area. Could you tell us a little more about that, please?
Excuse me. Hi, Sherry. This is Janet Babb, Hawaii Volcano Observatory. I just got the report before this call came on. I don't have any details at this time. It was just
okay.
Just our geologist had just gotten to the site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Jonathan Savvy. Your line is open. Please state your affiliation, followed by your question.
Hi, I'm Jonathan from H&N, and my question, just real quickly to clarify on the PGV, you said you got the report. Is that confirming that it did enter the grounds, or you just got a report that it might have? And then my actual question is in regards to the holes that have formed yesterday. I didn't hear any update on those and what the status of those are today.
Okay, regarding the lava flow in PGV, I cannot confirm that it's on the property. There was a fissure of interest, and our scientists were there taking a look to see where those flows might be headed. And that's all I know. I cannot confirm or deny that it's on the PGV property. Civil Defense might have more information for you on that. Regarding the holes or the cracks that we mentioned yesterday seemed that the lava was flowing into, those have been abandoned. There is no lava flowing into those cracks or holes today.
And so the lava that was flowing, the flow that was going into it, does that detoured around the holes, or is that flow just stopped going into the hole?
If I remember correctly, that was fissure 20, and that fissure is not active at this time. Fissure 22 is the main fissure that's sending lava to the ocean. And the fissure, it's interesting. The fissure 22 flows, the lava flow from fissure 22 has kind of split, and so one arm of that is reoccupying one of the areas of the fissure 20 flow.
So the western arm of the flow is now going into the 20 flow?
The eastern.
Gotcha.
Eastern flow. And we'll have a map. We are posting a map. It should hopefully be up in the hour, of a new map showing what's happening on the flow field.
Great. Thank you so much, guys.
We have time for about 2 more questions.
Okay, thank you. Our next question comes from Kevin Beaton. Your line is open. Please state your affiliation.
Hi, I'm with Honolulu Star Advertiser. Janet, I wonder if Highway 130 had cracking and other signs of sort of disturbance a while back, and then it was reopened with some metal plates on top. Are there any other signs of volcanic activity under that highway? In other words, is it possible that that highway could be damaged further?
Hey, Kevin, that's a good question. This is Janet Babb, Hawaii Volcano Observatory. Our geophysical modeling right now indicates that that's not the case right now. That all the activity is Leilani Estates and down the rift to Fissure 17, and really not beyond that. So it's right now what we're seeing is pretty localized to the area that we've seen the fissures in. So not to say it can't change, but right now our models are showing that it's the area that we're seeing that's active. That's where most of the action is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our last question comes from Jim Roop. Your line is open. Please state your affiliation.
Thank you very
much. Jim Rope with Westwood One News. All of my questions about lays have been answered, so I appreciate that very much. I guess this is for Janet Babb then. The operative word change that everyone has mentioned. It seems though this has been the operative word since day one, since May 3rd, when that first fissure opened up. Can you tell me how something so unpredictable and so vulnerable, how do you manage this on a daily basis without being able to really predict with certainty what's going to happen next? What is the biggest challenge you're facing?
Well, Jim, I think, I've been saying for probably decades now that the only constant on Kilauea is change, because we've seen changes throughout the 35-year-plus eruption on the volcano. So this is just part of being on an active volcano in Hawaii, and I'm not sure what you mean how we're coping with this. This is what we do. We did realize, we had put out some volcano activity notices about the possibility that what's happening could happen both on the lower east drift zone and at the summit, and so we were thinking about this and how we could respond to it, and I'm not sure how to explain it. It's what we do, and we have been helped with our USGS colleagues outside Hawaii, and it's I think the biggest challenge is just not enough hours in the day to get all the work done that we would like to get done to learn as much as we can about what's happening on the lower east drift zone and the summit. It is, as far as my time on Kilauea, it is unprecedented in that we have this summit activity, this remarkable summit activity going on at the same time as this fissure eruption in the lower east drift zone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you to all our speakers and for the questions that were posed today. We will be sending out a daily video update soon, and we also have a new batch of B-roll videos that I will be sharing via email with that.
And Paul, may I say one more thing? May I say one more thing?
Yes, please.
Okay, if people on the USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory website, in the menu bar at the top of the page, it's a dark blue bar. On the right-hand side, it says 2018 activity. If you can go there, we've listed a lot of resources about summit and lower east drift zone eruption. I think you might find helpful information there.
Great. Thank you, Janet. All right. That concludes today's call. Thank you very much.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.